Please welcome Social Capital's Paula Berezin.
Thank you, Voice of God.
You're welcome.
Welcome to Social Capital 2019. We, every year, for the last 9 years, have had a theme. And this year, we've decided no theme. It's just Social Capital 10. Every year, I love looking back at the videos, especially at the very beginning. I don't know if you caught John Egan from Coca-Cola, but he talks about sponsorship, and he says, sponsorship boils down to 3 things: reach, cost, and quality. And I had to smile because I thought, boy, we've really come a long way, Coca-Cola and all of us. And as we kick off the 2019 Social Capital Insights, we have 10 for 10 years. The first insight is all about this idea of how far we've come from sponsorship to becoming what we're calling root problem solvers. And I was looking back at our opening insights over the years, and this was a slide that we showed a few years back. And it's really interesting because then we were talking about how our partnerships were evolving. And we talked about there are 2 sides. You have business over here and nonprofit over here, and we have our social agendas. And we looked for our alignment and the intersection around shared values, and then we built our strategies. Today, we're seeing more enlightened partners come together more as one team with a holistic approach, becoming much more agile for sustainable solutions. And 4 partners we love that are great examples of root problem solvers, and you'll hear more from them today. All of them have partnerships in disaster relief, but also they all have gone from disaster relief to recovery and to resilience. And they have a couple of traits in common. They all are committed up front to do what it takes to get the job done and figure things out together. They're much more agile. The speed at which they figure out their plans is on a day-to-day basis, and they're willing to pivot when things happen and there's disruptions. And most importantly, they leverage their core strengths together. And that's what Mike Masterman, who's our partner keynote today, calls our superpowers. The most enlightened partners that unleash their core strengths and leverage their superpowers, they do it when they close gaps. So they look for not just what are we strong at and what are we uniquely better at, but they look at how can they close gaps that are not being addressed by others. The superpowers that we've seen rise to the top are 3. One is when organizations, both corporations, foundations, and nonprofits, double down on their expertise. That is the critical things. We're seeing nonprofits that are really rising to the top. It's less about their programs that they're trying to get people to fund, and it's more about their subject matter expertise. And the same things with corporations. The most enlightened partners recognize that the money only goes so far, but the real value is the brain trust, leverage with the resources. And then we're seeing people that leverage in organizations their networks, the second superpower. There are vast networks to be leveraged in order to scale up the issue and the problems you're solving for, especially networks at the community partnership level. And then there's your voice, and that's the third superpower. And we're seeing more and more, especially in this year, people and organizations and companies and their stakeholders speaking up. And not only speaking up, but speaking up to have people not just be aware, but to take action around important causes. So when it comes to closing gaps, Lyft is great at this. They have taken their core competency of transportation and technology, and they've leveraged it with their vast networks, starting with their drivers and then their deep community partnerships. And they use that to have relief rides for the most vulnerable. And then they use their own voice and the voice of their riders to not only raise awareness, but through their Roundup program to raise funds. This is why we're seeing the rise of frontline experts. And we're seeing organizations, both corporations and nonprofits, actually put more time and investment in their staff to double down on what their core expertise is and become subject matter experts. It's why we've seen, and Mike Goss was here last year and he's here again, very popular guy from Toyota. He talked about literally dispensing with the philanthropy people that handed out the money and trading them in for mobility experts so that the money would go farther for greater impact. And why we'll also hear from Mike Burlingame from the International Rescue Committee, who literally took his traditional nonprofit marketers and put many of them on a get well program or reinvented them and hired frontline journalists because of the challenges of truth and trust in the marketplace and breaking through. And when it comes to truth and when it comes to trust, we are at a real impasse because people are no longer trusting and the truth is up for grabs. It feels like the world has gotten a lot more divisive. There's a real sense of powerlessness, and there's a lot of anger out there. And one sign that we're seeing, and a surprising trend in the sea of discomfort and where we are right now, is that a lot of everyday people are turning their anger into action. We call this at Social Capital the citizen activists, especially our youth. 10 years ago, we saw the youth-led Arab Spring uprisings. Now, today, we've seen a whole host of youth leaders and youth-led movements, from climate change to immigration rights to gun safety. And we've seen another group of citizens, our lawyers. They've been around for a long time fighting for our rights. And back 10 years ago and even a century ago, we benefited from great organizations like the ACLU, who's here, who've worked to defend and preserve our rights. And with them, we're seeing a lot of everyday lawyers rise to the occasion, especially because of the challenges in the room. So one lawyer that you'll meet today is a guy who's extraordinary. His name is Jonathan Ryan. He was an immigrant himself. At one point, he was held in detention, and now he's the head of RISIS, the strongest voice for immigrant rights in this nation. And then there's our moms. 10 years ago, we had mom activists that were symbolic leaders like Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And now we've seen a whole host of mom-led organizations like Moms Demand Action. And today you're going to meet Shannon Watts, the founder of Moms Demand Action. She's a mom from Indianapolis, and she woke up one day and said, "This is not okay." And she turned her anger into action and founded Moms Demand Action, and literally with thousands of moms has taken on the gun lobby. And all of these citizen activists are fueling the rise of CEO activists, both in raising their awareness around issues and leveraging their economic power. 10 years ago and even more, we had the original CEO poster children, or poster older guys, hippie freaks, Ben and Cherries, speaking out on social justice, and now we have a whole host of CEOs speaking out, and even ones that are, we call enlightened self-regulators. So when our government is cutting and chopping regulations, we have CEOs like Microsoft speaking up, and he was just on the cover of Forbes for chopping carbon emissions well beyond government regulations. And these CEOs are symbols for their companies, and one symbol that caught our attention that's not a CEO, but a symbol for women leadership, was Fearless Girl. She showed up on the scene, and this is her staring down the bull on Wall Street. This year, she moved to a new home in front of the New York Stock Exchange. But we're seeing a whole rise of voices that are symbolic for how everyday people are trying to make change for good. And of course, we've seen the brand activists, and we used to debate, are they here to stay? Are they going to take on these polarizing issues? And I think we know the answer, that it's yes. We saw Nike with the ad from Believe in Something, even if it means sacrificing everything. We saw this fall Barbie take on Close the Dream Gap. She's come a long way. We have seen Gillette just come out with We Believe, the best men can be, and we'll hear more about this from P&G. And we got this gift from Microsoft this holiday. The biggest phenomenon that we've seen is the rise of the employee activist, who's the new superpower. It used to be that we were pretty inspired when we heard that the folks from Starbucks invented the Frappuccino, but now they're inventing things with great partners like Feeding America around food share and zero food waste. And we're also hearing employees speak out when they don't like what their company or their CEOs are doing, like this image of Salesforce. When employees hear that they're working on things like the border wall and they're not happy about it, they speak out and they will petition their CEOs and companies and say it's not okay. All of this with the rise of the citizen activist and the everyday people is going to this theme of the power of local. And we're seeing that this is become so critical in this era of low social trust. People have the most faith in the relationships around them. I love this quote from David Brooks from the New York Times, that trust is built and the social fabric is repaired when people form local relationships around hard tasks. And what I love are the two words, hard tasks, because that's what everybody in this room is all about. And a great example of this is Best Friends Animal Society. They're the leader of the no-kill movement, and they realized as they put their plan together that it's a ground game if they're gonna win. So they went about the hard work of changing behavior and changing laws at the local and the state level, like this one, where they banned puppy mills in California. And all of these insights are critical because we're going to need all of them to get them done, but there's one insight above all that's the most important because we're at an impasse. There's so many issues right now where we cannot find the common ground. So we're going to need this new skill of empathy if we're going to get over the bridge and really get to the root problem and solve things. What it requires is the art of working together toward common goals when we don't even have common ground. And actually, this is the practice of improvisation, and not just because I like to show Saturday Night Live videos. We found that a lot of best-of-breed organizations are adopting improvisation because it's actually a skill that helps you really learn how to deeply understand and figure out how to work together even when you don't have common ground, which is why we have the Second City and iconic Second City Works here today as our partner. They're not only the voice of God, yes, that's Andy Enninger, who's the voice of God from Second City, but he's also today and tomorrow going to be the voice of empathy. And we're going to hear a lot more about this because we are going to need the skill if we're going to collaborate better. And the next insight is this idea of we're going to need bigger tents and bigger cross-sector leadership collaboration if we are going to go the distance. And there's a lot of talk about collaboration and cross-sector leadership, but the truth is we don't really do it that well. We are predicting that we're going to see a lot more sisterhoods and coalitions and councils and competitors work together because right now we're at a point where nothing is off limits. As the problems are going to get messier and as we go beyond just the symptoms and get to the root problems, we're going to deal with issues that aren't so easy to package. And so we're seeing that now. We're seeing that from the Me Too movement to government shutdown, prison reform, things that you would have never seen brands align with, We are going to see those rise to the forefront because they're issues that we have to figure out together. Which leads me to the last insight, is that we're going to need a lot more expertise. We're going to need a lot more superpowers. And the superpowers are in this room. You're the leadership. And the last insight is that this movement, you're at the center of it, and the leadership starts with us in this room. I'd like to pause here and just thank, starting with our speakers who are extraordinary. I cannot wait for us to have a conversation and a candid exchange. And I also want to thank everyone in this room who made the cut. You're all speaker worthy, and this is a highly curated audience. We've turned away as many people as in this room, and it's not because we're trying to be elitist. We have found, trying to create a peer group that are working hard and fighting the good fight, that creating a safe space where there's no sponsorship, no advertisers, no exhibitors, no hitting people up, no self-serving questions, and no political rants. And if you do, we'll vote you off the island. And we have. But sincerely, we're very grateful for the work that you do. You are the front line, and we know who you are. So thank you. Let's get our day going. Thank you very much.